Hi everyone, my name is Andrew Serensits. I'm with Avaya. I work as a digital transformation specialist. I work very closely with the Avaya OneCloud CPaaS APIs. You might be wondering, what does CPaaS mean? It means Communication Platform as a Service. And the functionality we bring to the table is we're able to send SMS, receive SMS, similar with multimedia messages. And then you can also do things such as initiate calls, call control, and all of that falls under that umbrella. The one thing that Avaya OneCloud CPaaS kind of focuses on is that it decouples the functionality from the contact center. If you've known Avaya historically, we've been focused on that, and now with the APIs that we have, you don't need a contact center in the background. But if you do have a contact center you want to connect to, we support SIP and all of that. So there are ways to glue yourself into the environment. So that was just a little introduction about what CPaaS does as far as the functionality. And like I said, it's all in the cloud, and there are a number of different things you can do with it. Whether you want to just create a conference call, if you want to just initiate some sort of call because somebody clicked a button on a web page, once you see the API methods, the real power comes when you glue them together. For example, one of the kind of things I've done for myself personally is I have these IoT locks at my home, and my grandparents don't have smartphones, so they're not able to, log onto the app and unlock the lock like I would want. So I set up a number on Avaya that they can call into, and when they call into that number, they can either press 1 to unlock the door or 2 to lock it. But of course, I don't want just anybody calling that. So I have a little control where it looks up in a database and it checks to see if it's a valid number. And if it is a valid number, then it lets them control the lock. But one very many use case that took about 5 minutes to build, and you'd be surprised how that same code can be reused across many different use cases. And just because I started talking about some of the use cases that come out about this, now with the pandemic going around, one of the very popular ones is Curbside Pickup. Curbside Pickup really leverages the whole two-way back and forth between the business and the client. So whether that's voice or SMS, that's used heavily now in many different businesses in order to get the product in the hands of the customer in a safe manner. However, there are many other use cases such as emergency alerts. So something terrible has happened where somebody hits a big red button on a wall to alert everyone else, and then thousands of text messages could be sent out to a list of people. So that code that would send out the emergency text messages, you could use that for many other things as well. But one of the highlights of there is, or one of the popular use cases I've seen, is the emergency use case where something happened, we need to let everyone know. And the one other really main point that Avaya has been focusing on is using a combination of these CPaaS APIs with some sort of bot. When I say bot, any kind of chat bot. The one that's really popular today is Dialogflow. And what Avaya does have today in place is a one-click integration to say, hey, you have a number from us. If you click this button over here, we can piece it together with your Dialogflow project. And within minutes, you have an automated agent. So it's really powerful. And I believe, Alan, I'm not sure if you remember, but I was at a hackathon out in Phoenix out earlier in February, and this is kind of one of the things that was on the horizon, and even one of the hackers there kind of built a rough version of that. So now we have that, and it's moving forward. And I just talked about some of the use cases that you can build out with these APIs. A lot of them just revolve around messaging, recording, transcription, and voice. But like I said, if need be, there are SIP integrations. So now I'll show you where you would go to actually sign up. So I already have my account, but if you do not, you would click this sign up button. And then you would sign up for the account. And one important thing, and I'll flash it up again at the end of the presentation, is that once you create the account, you have to make a request to CPaaS support at avaya.com and request production access. And hopefully, if you can do this before the hackathon, that would be great to prevent any speed bumps, to make sure that you can have as much fun in the little sandbox that you can. And like I said, at the end, I'll flash that email address on the screen. So at this point, I'll show you what it looks like after you sign in. This would be the dashboard you're presented with. If you see here, it has the account SID as well as the auth token. Those are used as your authentication parameters in our REST API. So I'll show you in just a real little bit that Avaya CPaaS has a combination of REST APIs and inbound XML APIs, where inbound is used for inbound interactions primarily, and REST is used for if you want to initiate something or create an outbound request. Now from this point, I'll show how would you actually buy a number. Well, the one thing I will touch on is, because it was talked about with the RingCentral portion, we talked about having a finite amount of minutes or so forth. With Avaya, there are just dollars that are put into the account, and typically you would have to put those in, but I believe we are giving free credits, so you won't have to worry about that. And all the messaging and voice is fairly cheap anyway, but that is how that funding is done. You don't run out of minutes, you don't run out of messages. It all comes down to the dollars in the account. And with those dollars in the account, you could buy a phone number. So if I just go up here, numbers, buy a phone number. And I can just search for one now. But if you look over here, there is a list of countries that you can pick from the drop down, and then Avaya would know to search through that country's available numbers. So what I'll do, I'll search for one here. And I'll take this 302-0172. So I'll just take this number, I would click buy. And now I've successfully bought and added the number to my account. You can name it whatever you want. It doesn't really have much to do with it. But if you see down here, we now have these voice request URLs, SMS request URLs, and MMS request URLs. What this is basically saying is Avaya is asking you, okay, for voice, anytime somebody calls this number, we are going to make a post request to this voice request URL for further call processing. And at this point, you would want to make sure you have an endpoint configured so that when Avaya sends that call to that endpoint, that you can formulate the proper response and continue with the call processing. The same thing happens with SMS. So when an SMS is sent, where should Avaya send the request to? And this might be a little cryptic now because I didn't explain how you would respond to one of these requests. But I just wanted to show you, this is where you tell Avaya, all right, I have this number, any request that comes through, send it to here. And at this point, I'm going to actually put in this link for the SMS. I configure just a small application that whatever you send to it, it sends right back to you. But before I get into that, I wanted to show you that, for these voice and SMS request URLs, it expects an XML response. So there's a bunch of documentation on Avaya's inbound XML. And if you see, I'll go down to the SMS one. So when that request goes to that URL, it expects a response that looks something like this for an SMS. And if you look over here, it has the from equals that number, and then to equals whoever. And in the middle of the little angle brackets, it says, this is the body of the message. So for a simple SMS, that is something that would be formulated. Now, obviously, with voice, it gets more complicated. There are things, if you want to create your own IVR, there are gather elements. So you can say, all right, I want the user to either press 1 or say a certain word. And this tells the application that you're going to be picking up some sort of DTMF or speech input, and then you can respond. And I won't go through all this because this could probably take well over an hour. I just wanted to touch on a base of it. And the one thing I'll say about this is it doesn't say it here, but you do have libraries in PHP, Java, Node, .NET, Python, and Go. And this is really nice because obviously you don't want to have to create all that XML all by yourself. It's much easier with helper libraries, and that's one of the things Avaya provides. So the next portion I'll show you is the REST API. And with this, it just talks about here's a base endpoint authentication. Like I said, the authentication requires the initial account SID and auth token that are on this screen.
Okay, Andrew, just to give you a 2-minute warning, okay?
Yep, I'm on the road. So from here, you're able to, make calls, list calls, send digits to calls, and, do all the things that you want to do for call control, as well as list and send SMSs. So, you can intercept and create all sorts of really powerful applications via the REST APIs. And I just wanted to show you the one other thing we have. If you go to this Developers API Explorer, it will take you to here if you want to actually test out our APIs. And then from here, you could, send in a number. And if you want to send an SMS, now it will make the request, and boom, this is the response that Avaya gives back. So, and the one other thing I will touch on is Avaya is a carrier, so you're able to pass in a number, and you're able to tell things like the address of the number or whether it's mobile or not. So you might want to create a different experience. So I know that was more technical than maybe some of the other presentations, but I just wanted to try and give the lay of the land for what Avaya has to offer from the CPaaS point of view. And if you have any questions, please reach out. And I will promise this. So please reach out to this CPaaS support at avaya.com and request production access before the hackathon. Thank you.